The autumn wind howled through the cemetery, sharp and unforgiving, pulling at the yellowed leaves that clung to the twisted trees. Katy stood alone, her thin coat doing little to shield her from the biting cold that crept into her bones. Her eyes, swollen from hours of crying, followed the slow descent of her grandmother Maria's coffin into the frozen ground. Each tear that slid down her cheek seemed to crystallize with the cold, echoing the ache in her heart. Maria had been more than a grandmother to Katy, she was her anchor, her protector, the one constant in a world that often felt unstable. With her gone, Katy felt unmoored, like a boat adrift in a vast, silent sea of grief. Across the cemetery, her sister Lena stood apart, poised and polished, her black suit sharp and elegant against the gray sky. Lena looked less like someone mourning and more like a corporate executive attending a formal meeting. She had left their small provincial town years ago, chasing ambition and success in the city. Now she returned only briefly, her visits rare and impersonal. Katy and Lena had once been close, their differences playful and harmless. But over the years, those differences had widened into a canyon too deep to cross. Lena was fire and drive, always chasing the next big thing. Katy was soft, introspective, at peace with the small rhythms of everyday life. Their bond, once warm, now felt brittle and cold, just like the wind that swept through the graveyard. As the last of the mourners left, Lena approached. Her voice was clipped and emotionless. "I have to leave today," she said, not meeting Katy's eyes. "Work's piling up. You know how it is." Katy nodded, swallowing her pain. "I understand," she whispered. "The will's being read tomorrow at the notary's office. Be there," Lena added firmly, without waiting for a reply. She turned and walked to her sleek, expensive car, its modern luxury a stark contrast to the bleak landscape. Katy watched her drive away, the feeling of abandonment growing heavier. The last thread tying her to family seemed to unravel in the cold, empty silence left behind. The notary's office was a small, stuffy room, thick with tension and the scent of old paper. Katy sat rigidly in her chair, her hands clasped tightly in her lap. Behind her loomed her husband, Igor, his arms crossed, face set in a permanent frown. He didn't try to hide his disdain for grandmother Maria, he never had. To him, Maria was just an old woman clinging to a dusty past, her cluttered home and endless stories nothing more than a nuisance. He couldn't understand why Katy had adored her so deeply. The notary, an older man with drooping eyes and a tired voice, cleared his throat and began reading Maria's will. The room felt even smaller as the words filled the air. Lena was named the heir to a beautiful seaside cottage, an elegant home overlooking the ocean, the kind that would fit perfectly into Lena's glamorous lifestyle. Then came Katy's name. To Katy, Maria left her old Volga, a rusted, broken-down car that hadn't moved in years. Silence settled over the room like a heavy fog. Lena raised an eyebrow, her expression a mix of surprise and smug amusement. Igor let out a harsh, derisive laugh. "This is absurd," he barked, stepping forward, his face flushed with anger. "She gets a beach house, and Katy's left with a pile of junk? That can't be right." The notary, unfazed, adjusted his glasses. "This is the final, legally binding will of the deceased," he said calmly. Lena gave a dry, insincere smile. "Well, I'm thrilled about the cottage, of course," she said, her tone dripping with false sympathy. "But that car? Grandma must have lost her mind." Katy said nothing. Her thoughts were a whirlwind of confusion and disbelief. The Volga? That ancient car with its chipped paint and rusting body? As a child, she had loved listening to Maria's stories about it, tales of long, dusty drives and secret errands. But those memories felt distant now, like faded dreams. Why would Maria leave her something so seemingly worthless? Sitting there, humiliated and hurt, Katy couldn't understand the meaning behind the strange bequest, but she knew her grandmother never did anything without reason. Something was hidden in that rusted metal. She just didn't know what. Back home, Igor's anger erupted like a storm. In their cramped living room, his face twisted with fury as he hurled insults at Katy. "You're useless," he shouted, his voice shaking the walls. "You couldn't even inherit something of value. Who needs that rusted wreck?" Katy tried to explain, her voice trembling. "It wasn't my choice, Igor. I didn't ask for the car. But he wasn't listening. His rage had consumed him. He grabbed her by the shoulders, his fingers digging into her skin, his words cutting like knives. Pack your things and get out, he snarled, shoving her toward the door. You're nothing to me anymore. The words hit harder than any shove. Katie stood frozen, disbelief and pain flooding her chest. Years of enduring Igor's moods. His contempt, his control, was this all she meant to him? Where am I supposed to go? She whispered, tears streaming down her cheeks. I don't care, he snapped coldly. Sleep on the street. For all I care. I'm done with you. Clutching a small suitcase, Katie stepped into the fading light of dusk. Alone. Discarded. Her whole world crumbling behind her. With nowhere else to go, Katie wandered the streets of the town she had always known, now feeling foreign and cold. The weight of loss, rejection, and confusion pressed down on her chest with every step. Almost without thinking, her feet led her to the old garage behind her grandmother's house. There, under years of dust and rust, stood the Volga. The car looked worse than she remembered, its frame sagging, its paint flaking, rust spreading across the surface like scars. But as her fingers brushed against the cold metal, a memory stirred, Maria's voice, warm and firm, saying, "This car is more than just metal. Katie, it holds secrets, stories, a piece of our history." Curious and trembling, Katie fumbled in her coat pocket. Inside, she found an envelope with her name on it. Tucked inside were the car keys and a note in Maria's elegant, slightly shaky handwriting. "This is for you. My dear, don't be afraid." Katie clutched the keys, whispering the last words aloud. "Don't be afraid." A flicker of strength sparked in her chest, mingling with fear and wonder. She opened the trunk. The hinges groaned, releasing the scent of old rubber, oil, and something else, something comforting, like the faded warmth of Maria's embrace. Using her phone's flashlight, she illuminated the darkness inside. There, resting in the shadows, was a worn leather bag, its surface soft and aged, as though touched by countless hands. Beside it sat a small, heavy metal safe, its dull surface scratched but solid. On top of the safe was a folded piece of paper. Her heart pounded. Katie reached for the leather bag first. The texture felt almost alive, carrying the weight of stories and time. She unzipped it and gasped. Inside were dozens of black and white photographs, faces from long ago staring back at her. Soldiers in uniform, leaning against tanks, standing in bombed-out streets. Some smiling faintly, others with haunted eyes. On the backs of some photos were names and notes. Misha, Anna, Kalia, comrades at the front. Nadezhda, eternal memory. Tucked between the pictures were crumbling documents, handwritten letters, maps with red circles. And suddenly, Katie knew. The Volga wasn't junk. It was the beginning of a story waiting to be told. Katie's hands trembled as she reached for the folded paper resting atop the metal safe. It was a letter, written in Maria's familiar, careful script, each curve of ink slightly shaky, as if penned in haste. "My dearest Katya," the letter began, "if you are reading this, I am no longer by your side. Do not fear what you find in this car. It is not just an old relic, it is a vessel of memory. A testament to those who gave everything for our homeland." Katie's breath caught as she read on. "Inside the safe is gold, hidden from the Nazis during the war. It was used to save lives, to fund resistance, to protect the innocent. Now, it belongs to you. You must decide its fate. But remember, its true worth lies not in its shine, but in the stories it carries." A pause. "And one more thing, do not trust Lena. She has always chased status and wealth, blind to the deeper meaning of what I've left behind. This is yours alone. Be brave." Tears streamed down Katie's face as she clutched the letter to her chest. Her grandmother, so quiet, so unassuming, had been a heroine, a guardian of secrets, a keeper of history. It was almost too much to comprehend. She stared at the safe, her heart thudding. Gold? Why had Maria entrusted this legacy to her, Katie? Not Lena, who seemed so much more capable, more worldly? And then she remembered, Maria's note had mentioned something else. "You'll find my diary in the car. Read it. It holds the answers." Katie wiped her tears, determination slowly building inside her. This was no mistake. Maria had chosen her for a reason. And now, it was time to understand why. Determined to uncover the truth, Katie returned to the Volga and began searching through the trunk. Her fingers sifted through photographs, documents, and letters until they touched something firm beneath the spare tire, a small, leather-bound notebook. It was Maria's diary. Katie climbed into the driver's seat, the cracked leather creaking under her weight. With only her phone's flashlight for illumination, she opened the first page. The faded handwriting pulled her into another world. 1941. War, fear, devastation. But we will not surrender. We will fight for our homeland until our last breath. Each entry revealed more about Maria than Katie had ever known. Her grandmother had been a partisan courier during the war, risking her life to deliver secret messages, hiding refugees, and securing weapons and medicine for the resistance. Beneath her soft voice and gentle smile had lived a woman of extraordinary courage. One passage stopped Katie cold. Before the war, a wealthy merchant, sensing the darkness ahead, had entrusted Maria with a cache of gold coins and bars, meant to be protected until peace returned. When he died in battle, Maria became the gold's sole guardian. She used it to bribe informants, buy medicine, free prisoners, and keep the resistance alive. This gold isn't mine, Maria had written. I am only its keeper. It belongs to the people, to our future. Katie read for hours, her breath fogging the cold interior of the Volga. Maria's words revealed a life of sacrifice, courage, and quiet defiance in the face of tyranny. By the time she closed the diary, Katie's heart was full. She now understood. The gold wasn't just treasure. It was trust, a sacred legacy, passed down not to the most powerful, but to the most faithful. To her. The next morning, Katie took a deep breath and began calling local museums. Her hands trembled as she explained her story, Maria's diary, the wartime photographs, the hidden gold. The art museum politely referred her elsewhere. But the town's small history museum was different. A man named Dmitri answered the phone. His voice was warm, curious, as Katie stammered through her account. His tone shifted from polite interest to barely restrained excitement. Please, he said urgently, come to the museum as soon as you can. The town's history museum was housed in an old crumbling mansion, its faded grandeur a perfect setting for lost stories. Dmitri, a tall, thin man in his 30s with bright eyes and unruly chestnut hair, greeted Katie at the door with a firm, reassuring handshake. His office was a chaotic wonderland of books, maps, and yellowing documents, the air thick with the scent of history. Katie carefully laid out what she had brought, the worn leather bag, the photographs, the documents, and finally, Maria's diary. Dmitri handled each item with reverence, asking questions gently but sharply, scribbling notes as he worked. When Katie finally revealed the key hidden among the papers and opened the metal safe, Dmitri froze. Inside, the gold glimmered, coins and bars tucked neatly inside, their weight heavy with untold stories. This, he whispered, eyes wide, is extraordinary. This isn't just treasure. It's a piece of history. For the first time in days, Katie felt something other than sorrow or fear. She felt pride. Maria's story, so long hidden, was finally beginning to shine. And Katie had become its voice. As word of the discovery spread, the town buzzed with excitement. News outlets ran front-page stories about the Volga treasure. Journalists called, historians reached out, and strangers praised Maria's bravery. Katie, once shy and hesitant, found herself speaking with quiet confidence, her voice steady as she shared her grandmother's story. But not everyone celebrated for the right reasons. Igor resurfaced almost immediately. He flooded Katie's phone with calls and messages, full of false remorse and sudden affection. He promised to change, begged her to come back, swore he had never meant what he said. Katie didn't hesitate. You think I'd return after what you did? She said coldly during one call. I'm not that woman anymore. Igor, I found my strength. Then Lena reached out. Her voice was casual, but her intentions were clear. We should decide together what to do with the gold, she suggested, as if she hadn't mocked the Volga only days earlier. Katie smiled bitterly. You didn't care about Grandma's legacy. I've made my choice. The gold, the diary, everything, is going to the museum. This isn't about money. It's about honoring her. Lena's mask slipped. Her calm turned into anger, accusing Katie of being naive, of throwing away a fortune. But Katie no longer wavered. She had found something far more valuable than gold. Purpose, clarity, integrity. And she knew exactly what Maria would have wanted her to do. With her few belongings packed, Katie slid into the Volga's driver's seat. The car, once mocked as a worthless relic, now felt like a symbol of freedom. Its creaking frame and worn interior reminded her not of failure, but of resilience, of Maria's enduring spirit. She drove to the museum one final time to thank Dmitry and his team. Their dedication had transformed the collection into a powerful tribute. As he shook her hand, Dmitry smiled warmly. You've done something incredible, Katie. Your grandmother would be so proud. Katie's heart swelled with emotion. She knew he was right. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting the sky in hues of crimson and gold, she drove out of town, leaving behind the ghosts of her past. The road ahead was unknown, filled with uncertainty, but Katie was no longer afraid. She started a new life in a peaceful city. Her apartment was modest but cozy, its windows overlooking a tree-lined street. She took a job as a paramedic at a modern clinic, helping others just as Maria once had. Her work gave her purpose, and her patients, especially the elderly, reminded her of the strength that lives in quiet hearts. For the first time in years, Katie felt truly free. She often reflected on her years with Igor and how long she'd lived under his shadow, mistaking his control for love. But now she saw clearly, her worth had never depended on anyone else. She had become her own anchor, her own strength. The Volga, the gold, and Maria's diary hadn't just changed her life, they had revealed who she truly was. Katie was Maria's granddaughter, and she had finally become fearless. In her free time, Katie dove deeper into her family's past. She contacted local archives, pored over historical documents, and interviewed elderly villagers from Maria's hometown. Piece by piece, she uncovered the life of a woman she'd only glimpsed through childhood stories. Maria had once been a vibrant young woman, a poet and scholar with dreams of teaching. The war had stolen those dreams, but not her spirit. As a wartime nurse, she braved battlefields to save the wounded. As a partisan, she risked her life for freedom. And after the war, she rebuilt her village, teaching children and nurturing a community with quiet, unwavering strength. One day, Lena called. She asked to visit. Katie was hesitant, but hopeful. When Lena arrived, she seemed different, softer, more vulnerable. Over tea, she confessed her loneliness. I thought the cottage would make me happy, she admitted, her voice trembling. But I feel so empty. Katie listened, her heart softening. I've been there too, she said gently. But real happiness comes from love, from meaning, from connection. Lena's eyes welled with tears. You're right, I've been chasing the wrong things. In the days that followed, the sisters spent time together, visiting museums, walking through the city, reminiscing about childhood. For the first time in years, they truly reconnected. Before leaving, Lena hugged Katie tightly. Thank you for everything. I love you. I love you too, Katie whispered. As Lena departed, Katie felt something she hadn't in a long time, warmth. A sense of family, a bond reborn. She promised herself to cherish it, just as Maria had once cherished them both. Katie's life unfolded with quiet strength and meaning. Each day, she poured herself into her work as a paramedic, tending to the forgotten, the elderly, the fragile lives at the edge of society. She saw pieces of Maria in every wrinkled face, every trembling hand, every whispered story from a hospital bed. The past no longer haunted her, it had become her compass. In her spare time, she continued exploring her family's legacy, uncovering forgotten letters, stories passed down in fading ink, and memories preserved in trembling voices. Maria, once just her gentle grandmother, had grown into something much greater, a symbol of resilience, of sacrifice, of love in its fiercest form. Katie often drove the Volga through the city, its worn engine humming like an old song. People stared sometimes, at the relic of a car, at the woman inside who seemed out of place in a world of speed and shine. But Katie didn't mind. That car carried history. It carried truth. She no longer envied lives that glittered on the surface. She had lived through silence, cruelty, abandonment, and emerged whole. Not hardened, but awakened. Sometimes she thought of Igor, of the version of herself who had once needed his approval. She pitied that woman, not for her weakness, but for how long she believed love had to be earned through suffering. Now she knew better. Love, the real kind, is quiet, fierce, rooted in memory. It lives in legacies, in truth, in courage passed from one hand to another. And Katie would carry it forward,